Hello and welcome to Spencer's Library. I'm Claudia, and this is the 7th episode in my series all about the women of Harry Potter. This time it's all about Lily Potter, so there will be spoilers for all 7 Harry Potter books. You have been warned. Lily Potter is possibly the most important female character in Harry Potter who doesn't get any screen time. We only ever see and hear echoes of her through memories and ghostly apparitions, second-hand accounts from other people. It's really difficult to try and establish a canon of Lily because almost all of the information that we get about her comes from other people. But that doesn't make her any less important as a symbol in the series, or more pragmatically as a plot device. She is one of the biggest driving forces behind other characters' actions. In the eyes of Severus Snape and also of Harry, our main character, Lily is a faultless, angelic figure, a symbol of all that's perfect and good. Petunia Dursley, on the other hand, still holds a grudge against her younger sister that she's kept alive even after Lily's death and projected onto Lily's only child, Harry. For Sirius, Remus and Hagrid, on the other hand, Lily's very much a sort of appendage to James Potter, more like a part of him than a complete person in her own right. And finally, for Dumbledore, Lily is a powerful weapon that is wielded against Voldemort and also used to secure Severus' complete and undying loyalty. So it would be silly for me to try and give you a definitive and factual biography of Lily because she simply isn't enough of a character in her own right for me to do that. The narrative doesn't use her as a person with a personality, but more as a sort of mirror that reflects back on the people who cared about her in one way or another. Let's start with Petunia Dursley. Out of all of the characters in Harry Potter, she knows her the longest, and it's her who actually gives us the very first introduction to Lily in the first book. This is when Hagrid bursts into the hut on the rock and tells Harry that he's a wizard while the Dursleys are hiding out. This is also the first time that we actually hear her name. "You knew," said Harry. "You knew I'm a wizard?" "Knew?" shrieked Aunt Petunia suddenly. "Knew? Of course we knew. How could you not be, my dratted sister being what she was?" "Oh, she got a letter just like that and disappeared off to that school and came home every holiday with her pockets full of frog spawn turning teacups into rats. I was the only one who saw her for what she was, a freak. But for my mother and father, oh no, it was Lily this and Lily that. They were proud of having a witch in the family." So we later find out that Petunia's bitterness stems entirely from jealousy. Petunia resents Lily for being the special child, for not being magical herself. She saw how magic pulled her and Lily apart, and she never got over that pain of being separated from Lily and not being able to join her in this new world and being left behind in the mundanity of the Muggle world. But apart from this outburst in the Philosopher's Stone, Petunia rarely mentions Lily. There's this one bit in the Order of the Phoenix where she recollects this conversation that Lily had with young Snape. But other than that, she keeps her feelings very much bottled up. It's not until we see Lily and Petunia really interact in the Princess Tale chapter that we realise the extent to which this relationship has impacted Petunia as an adult. So the next account that Harry gets is from Hagrid, and then later from Remus Lupin and from Sirius Black. I'm putting all of these together because they all seem to look on Lily as James's other half more than anything else. So she's described as talented, as good, as a great person and a wonderful mother, and as a fantastic fit for James, and we don't get any more characterization than that really. I feel like these accounts only add to this weirdly angelic image that we and Harry get of Lily throughout the series. So let's move on to Severus Snape. I'm sure theses have been written on the whole Snape and Lily relationship, but I don't really want to talk about these two as children and adolescents here. In Snape's memories of Lily, we again see a perfect person. She's beautiful and she's kind and talented and popular. She stands up for herself both to James and to Severus. So far, so boring. We know that memories in Harry Potter are perfect records of the past, so we know that the way we see Lily here is true, that all of these scenes actually happened exactly like that. However, the memories that Snape actually passes on to Harry are already pre-edited. So I'm sure Snape knew Lily in other moments when she was less than perfect, when she was rude or lazy or mean. But this edited version of her is what Snape chooses to remember her by. Snape is the perfect embodiment of a very specific kind of misogyny. The way that he sees Lily as almost holy rather than as a real person is indicative of something that's called benevolent sexism. So I'm sure you've all heard men say that women are just better than men and stuff like that. And Severus Snape portrays a really extreme version of that view. He does not love Lily the person with faults. He loves an idealized version of her. Her death almost canonized her as a saint to him. His religious devotion to her is the entire motivation for his character throughout the 7 books. So this Catholic imagery really presents itself here, the devotion, the penance, the striving for absolution. Lily is a god or an angel or a saint to Snape. Sometimes I wonder whether the narrative falls into the same trap and portrays Lily as a perfect angel, or whether it is trying to subvert that idea of her and wants to show through Snape how dark and dangerous this kind of idealization can get. If that's the case, if Rowling's trying to show how putting women on a pedestal is a bad thing, I'm not sure how successful she is in that. But I'd like to hear your opinion on this. Anyway, to Snape, Lily is pure motivation. Everything he does is driven by this obsession with her. And of course, there's Dumbledore cultivating this obsession in Snape in order to execute his master plan. Lily serves 2 purposes to Dumbledore. The first one, I've just mentioned, and it's the thing that keeps Snape bound to Dumbledore. He knows this, and he uses Lily in order to put pressure on Snape and secure his loyalty to him. And the other way that Dumbledore weaponizes Lily is in the direct fight against Voldemort. The fact that Lily died to save Harry is the single most powerful thing that helps Dumbledore defeat Voldemort through Harry. From the moment that he learns of the circumstances of the Potter's death, he's right in there. He knows how to use this fact against Voldemort, and he creates this very powerful spell. He tells Harry that his mother's love protects him from evil, but he doesn't tell him the entire plan, of course. Lily's sacrifice becomes Dumbledore's biggest secret weapon, leading to Harry's sacrifice later on. Motherhood and motherly love is one of the main themes in the entire Harry Potter series. We see this reflected in Molly Weasley, Narcissa Malfoy, in Merope Gaunt, and in Petunia Dursley. But in the form of Lily, motherly love is described as basically the most powerful force in the universe. Lily is a symbol for love more than a real person again. It's what saves Harry's life more than once. Lily is her sacrifice. So I've been looking through all 7 books to find a real first-hand account of Lily that gives us any indication of what kind of character she could have been if she hadn't been limited to this superhuman driving force in the books. She appears now and again as a ghostly apparition, first in the Mirror of Erised, then in the graveyard scene when Voldemort comes back to life, and finally in the Forbidden Forest as Harry walks to his death. But in all of these scenes, she is again just used as a symbol of pure motherhood and love. But there's one bit where I think we actually hear Lily's real human voice, and that's in the Deathly Hallows, when Harry finds part of her letter to Sirius in Grimmauld Place, and he picks it up and reads it, and this is her writing and her words and her voice. Dear Padfoot, Thank you for Harry's birthday present. It was his favourite by far. 1 year old and already zooming along on a toy broomstick. He looked so pleased with himself. I'm closing a picture so you can see. You know it only rises about 2 feet off the ground, but he nearly killed a cat and he smashed a horrible vase Petunia sent me for Christmas. No complaints here. Of course James thought it was so funny, says he's going to be a great Quidditch player, but we've had to pack away all the ornaments and make sure we don't take our eyes off him when he gets going. We had a very quiet birthday tea, just us and old Bathilda, who has always been sweet to us and who dotes on Harry. We were so sorry he couldn't come, but the orders got to come first and Harry's not old enough to know it's his birthday anyway. James is getting a bit frustrated shut up here. He tries not to show it, but I can tell. Also, Dumbledore's still got his invisibility cloak, so no chance of little excursions. If you could visit, it would cheer him up so much. Wormy was here last weekend. I thought he seemed down, but that was probably the news about the McKinnons. I cried all evening when I heard. Bathilda drops in most days. She's a fascinating old thing with the most amazing stories about Dumbledore. I'm not sure he's pleased if he knew. I don't know how much to believe, actually, because it seems rather incredible that Dumbledore... And this is, of course, where the letter finishes because Harry can't find the very last line of it. So what do we get from this letter about the real person? She's certainly got a sense of humour. She seems a very caring person. She talks about how James is feeling and how Wormtail is feeling. So she seems very perceptive and caring about others. And she also seems very patient. We need to remember that at this point she's, 20 or 21? And she's locked up with a small child and a husband who seems to be getting more annoyed by the day. And yet she finds the time to write to his friends and let him know how they're all doing. In this short glimpse, we get an idea of Lily as a real, breathing, living human being with emotions and a life. It's a bit of a shame that that's all we get from her, but on the other hand, I do understand that not everyone gets to be a character in their own right. And poor Lily has the dubious honour of being both the most powerful force for good in the books, while not actually being allowed to show much of a personality herself. Let me know what you think about Lily. Do you see her as a character? Do you see her as a plot device? Or do you see her as a symbol? I'd be interested in hearing your opinion. Thank you for watching. Bye.